Welcome! Last week I did a video about how I throw this super big bowl, 20 kilo of clay, that ended up as a big flower pot. As I mentioned, I still want to do some trimming to just perfect the shape a little bit, and I probably want to cut out some facets on the side because I think it will look good with the glazing that I'm planning. So today I'm going to show you how to trim a big pot like this, and also some really interesting tools that you may not have expected. So let's get on with that. Trimming a big pot is essentially not that different from trimming a small pot, except of course there's much more pot. There's a lot more clay to go around. So I use some of my favorite trimming tools for this, some of the bigger turning tools like this. But because the surface is so big, it can be difficult to get like the even curves or straight lines that you're looking for. So I'll show you how I can deal with that. But I'm gonna start out with these tools to do some of the basic shaping. I wanna have the foot a little bit slimmer, and I wanna even out the wall a little bit. It's too thick, a little too thick here. So I wanna start with that. This is a nice sort of soft leather heart. It may be a little bit early to trim for some of you. You may prefer to wait a little bit. I like to start the trimming when it's on the soft side, because then we are removing that clay so it doesn't need to dry. So the rest of it will dry faster. The good thing is, it still looked pretty well centered. Sometimes when you do, especially big pots like this, as it dries, it can dry a little bit out of shape. But I covered this up overnight from yesterday, so it kind of dried slowly. And when I didn't have it covered up, I had it rotating. Even if you don't have a draft in your studio, like I don't think I have here, but even then there might be different temperatures around it. So by turning it around just very slowly, you secure a better and more even drying. So it's usually I want to start at the foot, but it's actually not such a good idea, because if you start at the foot, you're going to weaken the stability of the pot, and then when you trim higher up, you add a lot of torque, and it can actually move it a bit around. So contrary to my initial logic, I actually start out here, and because it's still on the wet side, I collect the clay like this, and actually it can be wedged up directly and used. Because if you don't do that, it will glue to the pot, and it'll just be difficult to remove it. And as always with a big pot, make sure that you get a full round. It does take a little more time than if you're dealing with a small pot. So make sure that you get a full round before moving down. Just go slow, there's no rush. And I always like to feel, inside out, if it's if the wall have the thickness you're aiming for. In this case, I'm also trying to even out the wall a little bit, because it is quite even, but it's a little thicker here, where it also bobbed out a little bit. So it's actually getting better already. Don't push it too much, because that can push it out of shape. And to begin with, when you trim, you're probably going to leave some marks. It's no problem. I'm going to fix that in a minute. See, it's already getting better. It's still. Then when you have to judge it, now I can watch. I have like a mirror in the camera, but one of the problem when trimming is that sometimes you look at the wall, and you should really be looking at the edge, because that's where you judge the shape. So yeah, now it's getting much more in the shape that I was aiming for. Yeah, a little bit here. Dealing with a rather large surface like this, and a small, relatively small tool like this, it can be difficult to get an even curve. So one of the trimming tools that I recently learned that you can use is really not a trimming tool, but just this is a hacksaw. And of course, if you want some texture, you can use the textured side, but you can also use the plain side. And it's actually a wonderful trimming tool. Some people also use other kinds of metal. I even saw a guy using a big saw for very big pots. But this one, just go slowly, just using it like this. Makes it much easier to make a continuous and straight curve. And of course it scrapes off like any other tool would. But it's just because you have that long surface, it's easier to make it straight without any inconsistency. So look, it's getting much more even this way. This is a wonderful tool, and it costs almost nothing in a hardware store. See, it's much more easy. It's difficult maybe to see, but when you're using this, it's much more easy to see that the wall is actually even, and you don't have anything that's bubbling out or going in or something. This tool just makes that so much more easy. I also use this on a big shallow bowls if you want to trim them on the inside. Using this will also make it much more even. So that was sort of the first step. My plan is, as I said, to cut some facets. I also want to trim the base a little bit, not too much, because I actually made it quite thin. It's almost the same thickness down here as it is here and here, which is good. I made it really nice and wide inside, but I want to cut from about here, cut these slices out. I'm probably going to use my cheese cutter. I'm not quite sure yet. The cheese cutter is nice because it's easier to control the depth. You could also use just a wire like this, or if you want to, and I may do that this time, a twisted wire that makes it a little more textured. There's all options, and it's all super cheap options. But what I found is that you want it to be soft enough to cut, but not too soft, because then it's going to stick to your wire, and it's going to glue to the surface. So this is actually a little bit too soft for that. But I have the basic shape now. I could start trimming the foot. I may just, take a little bit off it, but I'm not going to do too much trimming of the foot now because I want the facets to go down as far as I can, and then I will trim off the facets so to get a nice ending on that. If I trim too much off the foot now, I won't be able to do that. So I think I'm going to stop for now, and then I'm going to leave it to dry just a little bit more, and then I'll get back. Also the same thing up here. Up here I will have it go in a little bit, and then move out to the fat rim and make it a little more accentuated. Accentuated, I think it's called. So yeah, let's just leave it for now. I'll get back to you very soon. So now it has dried a little bit more, and it's beginning to be sort of a little hard. It's still a little bit tacky on the outside, but I think I'm gonna try at least to do the next step, which is most scary because it's sort of like a make or break. I want to cut the facets on the side of it. It may not work yet, but I can try and cut the first one and see how it goes. But first, I want to remove the splash pan. Because I want to be able to get as far down as possible. And for this, I'm going to use my cheese cutter. It's a wonderful tool. I know some places they don't have them anymore. In Denmark we still make them. But then maybe you can find it at a flea market or something. Before I cut it, I just want to make a small mark. Not a very deep one, but just a very small mark. Let me just find a pen here. No, not that one. This one. I'll just make a small mark here because I want all the cuts to start at the same place. And to do that, it's much easier if I just have a small mark here. So this way I know exactly where to start my cutting. And these walls are still pretty thick, but when you do this, there's always the risk that you go too deep. The deeper you go, the wider it will be. So gotta find the right balance here. And you gotta try and go like in one go. Like this. Yeah. I think this is gonna go okay. This clay, I think, could almost just be wet stopping in. So I'm gonna go all the way around and do this. It's good to keep the string clean. So, you see, sometimes it gets a little bit wrinkled, or like, but because I'm going to use a glaze that breaks really well over these edges, it's actually fine. Once you start cutting, don't stop, just finish it. A bit of way to go. So now you got to decide whether to make 1 or 2 cuts to fit it. I think I'll just make one very wide here. So now we have it cut all the way around. I think that turned out really well. So now we can do what I was talking about and trim the foot a little bit to try and yeah, something like this. I want to take, let's see, I have this one, a little bit of a different shape. I want to create just a little bit of a lift down here. I'm not going to glaze the very bottom because I'm just going to leave the glaze at the end of the facets. It's also going to help give it a little light feel. I'm just going to use my finger here because this is also going to work as a sort of a glaze catcher. Not very much, but just a little bit. So, okay. It's going to go under here. So, I think that looks very nice. So now I'm going to finish up the top. And for that, I have, just take this one. And always make sure that you clean the tools. It's easy to clean them when they're dry because it just rubs off like dust. But because if there's any clay left here, they're going to leave stripes. So now I'm just going to yeah, I like this white rim. If I can make it just a little bit thinner. Yeah. I'm just gonna use a very flexible rib here, just to smooth it a little bit. I like the contrast to this very textured side, and then have very smooth top rim. It's still sort of leather hard. If I wait a little bit more, I can and come just a little more dry. I can use a shiny stone, whatever you have, to make it even more smooth. Also, sometimes use these special, these are from mud tools, very, very fine particle sponges. They're not very good to suck up water, but they're very good to smooth a surface. I think they're also used for porcelain because they're so fine grained that they don't leave any of the usual sponge marks, but just smooth out. I think that's it. If you have some, little pieces of clay left here, don't try and remove it now, because if you try and remove it, it will just smudge into the clay. Just leave it, and then when it's completely dry, it's very easy just to scratch them off if you want that. But all in all, I think this turned out really well. Now it's just matter of drying it completely. I was thinking about maybe turning it around and trimming a foot. I'm not sure, because it depends a little bit of how heavy it is, because turning it around, I mean, lifting it up is okay, I can do that, but turning it around, I'm afraid if I dump it down, I will break the rim. So it's a balance. I'll see if it's possible. Otherwise, I can also put it on a sponge or mattress or something, because then I won't hit the surface and risk of breaking it. That would be sad now that I worked so hard for this one. So dry time, and then I'll glaze it. I'll show you a picture once it's fully glazed. It won't be in this video, but in another video. So now I just need to cut it off before putting it to dry. So just gonna go 2 times. It's a very big pot. It's a lot of weight, but that should be good. So now we can just let it dry. I'm gonna let it just spin very slowly on the wheel, at least overnight, to make sure that it dries evenly. I decided, after all, to turn it around and trim the button a little bit. The button is about 2.5 centimeter, which is not terribly thick, but I still would like to maybe trim a centimeter off. I put it on a big bat. I have these very wide bats that I made, and I put this mattress kind of thing just to protect the rim. The good thing about a pot this heavy is that you don't need to put any clay on the side to keep it in position. However, centering it was a little bit difficult, but now, as you see, if I turn it around, the centering is pretty good. So now I'm ready to trim the button, and we'll do that. After making sure that it's well centered, the first thing I will do is I will mark up where the rim should be, or the foot rim should be. And for a pot this heavy, of course, I'm not looking for a very thin foot. It's going to be a wide foot. I'm just going to trim the inside of it. Trying to keep your hand steady for this. Yeah. Of course, you can't see this now, so I think I'll move the camera a little bit. Yeah, this is better. So now you can see I made an inner mark. It's terrible with these white bats, and now with this mattress too, I can't even, it's difficult to fit my legs around it. I made this inner mark, and that's also to check that it is completely centered, and it is. The rim looks even all the way around. This mark serves 2 points. It's purposes. It makes me check that it is centered, which it is, and also give me sort of a guide to where I'm going. I'll just go a little bit deeper here. The tricky part with trimming the rim is that you should keep the tool steady and don't follow the pot, because then you will get uneven trimming, and it can be really difficult. I usually start out with, instead of trimming like with the width of the tool, I use the corner, because then it only touches smaller surface and there's less of a resistance. But still, hold on to it. So, getting the first layer off. All the grooves, all the spikes. Just take it slowly. Also, I mean, this is still pretty thick, and it is getting on the dry side, sort of soft leather hard, but don't push down. You should more scrape it, so you put it in the position you want, put it down to whatever level you want, and then you scrape it off. Because if you push too much, there's a risk that you push your way through the button. Yeah, that's going well. You can tap it on the way. I already measured the depth of the button, so I know it's about 2.5 centimeters, 2 centimeters. So I have plenty of clay to go. So see, it's a lot of clay because it's a white button. So So I'm using this wider rim now, not to take away so much clay, but just to even out the surface. Now it's getting better. I also want to just make sure that the foot rim itself is leveled perfectly. I'm not removing much here, I'm just leveling it. So I think it's beginning to look well. I'll just smooth it a little bit with a metal whip. And a more flexible soft whip. And then for the corner here, I just want to use my fingers and to make sure that we have a smooth, round corner here. If you have any corners that are too sharp, there's a risk that they will chip off if they hit something. With the rounded corners, it's less of a risk. The last thing I want to do is just to make sure that this part here looks perfect. Also going to smooth this. So I think that looks really good. I didn't take too much out. Maybe I could have taken out a little bit more, maybe, but I'd rather be on the safe side. And I don't want a super thin button. I just want to take out a little bit, and it looks nice. So my last thing is my maker's mark. These wonderful ones that I had made in, well, maybe you can see it here. I'm not sure. Can you see? Yeah. That I had made in Ukraine. I have a video about it. Wonderful stainless steel, very cheap and very good work. I had a couple of them made, so and they gonna last forever. And what I like about them is that they're very high, so you can leave a very deep imprint, and also you can make very fine lines because it's laser cut in stainless steel, and yeah, they last forever. So I'm just going to make that here. Now this is still a thick button, so there's not such a big risk when making the mark, but in case you don't have such a thick button. Just be careful when you press it down. Do it very gently. If it's a small pot, you can support on the inside with your hand so you don't make the mark come through. So that's it. Wonderful. In case you enjoyed this video, please, as usual, subscribe, comment, share. I'd love to hear from you, and I hope to see you very soon again. Have a good day.